In today's video, we need to talk about the fat cells instead of the diet. It's about your body and how it functions, not the diet. Diet comes second, starting now. What's up, everyone? Welcome to my very humble freaking channel. Now let's dive right into this whole fat cell thing. I know I've been doing a lot of videos on gaining weight, losing weight, and I want to talk about it again because I really believe it's the number one fear or phobia of people. And this is why people fast or do the snake diet or intermittent fast, dry fast. People say they want to do it because of their eczema, but they really want to do it for the weight loss. Or they'll say, well, I'm doing it like the woman I reviewed yesterday. She said, what was it, like Fabulous to Meet You or something like that channel? Delightful. That was her channel. I got to post it. I keep forgetting. She said, oh, I wanted to clear up my skin, but I also wanted to lose weight. I really think people want to lose weight. And then hopefully, I don't know, weight gain is such an obsession with this culture. But there are little nuances that get people thrown off, that they think they could just fast or do a carnivore diet or even do a keto diet and lose weight. People did keto years ago. They did well and then they failed. Then carnivore came around and everybody was pushing high protein. It sort of sufficed and pacified people's fear of eating fat. And then a whole host of issues started to happen when people decided to eat high protein carnivore. And we're going to go more into this. What's so cool is today I'm going to break down Ben Beekman's, his Facebook page, his reels. I think he's got some gems. Now, I don't agree with everything he says, and I absolutely don't think he's the keto expert because he doesn't factor in ketones as much as he does glucose regulation. But I want to sort of go over some little cool nuggets he's been talking about. In this video, he's going over what happens to your fat cells once you age. I think people are not considering the health of their cells. Now, age matters, and it does not matter. And it's for different reasons. If you are taking care of your body from childhood, then your metabolic strength is going to be much more solid than somebody who ate bad, who drank, who skipped meals, who fasted. People who treat their body like a trash can and do the standard American diet, or they're alcoholics are doing too many pharmaceutical interventions. These are the people that, as they get older and they try to fix the body from damage, struggle. But let's go more into it.
Our adulthood. And any further change we have, if we gain more fat, it's just a function of the size of the fat cells growing. And that becomes relevant as we age, because when we get to around our 60s or 70s, the number of fat cells we have starts to decline. But if we continue to eat the same way that had us store a certain amount of fat, that means the remaining fat cells simply get bigger and bigger. And the bigger the fat cell gets, the more insulin resistant it becomes and pro-inflammatory it becomes, making the rest of the body insulin resistant. It will surprise nobody to learn that as we age, the risk of insulin resistance goes up. Part of this happens because of what happens in our fat tissue. And that was the focus of this manuscript that was just published today. One of the points that I want to highlight is what happens to the number of fat cells we have. As we go through infancy and childhood and puberty, the number of fat cells we have is rising, and then it basically flatlines for the rest of our adulthood. And any further change we have, if we gain more fat, it's just a function of the size of the fat cells growing. And that becomes relevant as we age, because when we get to around our 60s or 70s, the number of fat cells we have starts to decline. But if we continue to eat the same way that had us store a certain amount of fat, that means the remaining fat cells simply get bigger and bigger. And the bigger the fat cell gets, the more insulin resistant it becomes and pro-inflammatory it becomes, making the rest of the body insulin resistant.
In this video, Ben is going to talk about inflammation within the fat cells. So let's give a listen.
It begins to more actively and aggressively secrete or release what's called pro-inflammatory cytokines. These are basically small proteins that begin to turn on the immune system throughout the body. At the time, this was called something known as subclinical chronic inflammation. So it wasn't like the person had a fever or was fighting an infection, and yet they still had, nevertheless, elevated levels of inflammation. And as the fat tissue expands, it creates more inflammation, and this then promotes problems like heart disease, atherosclerosis, and of course, insulin resistance. One of the first things that interested me about metabolic health and what ultimately put me on the journey that I'm still on was a finding in the late 1990s that documented how fat tissue becomes very pro-inflammatory. It was fascinating to me at the time, and still is, that as our fat tissue starts to grow, it begins to more actively and aggressively secrete or release what's called pro-inflammatory cytokines. These are basically small proteins that begin to turn on the immune system throughout the body. At the time, this was called something known as subclinical chronic inflammation. So it wasn't like the person had a fever or was fighting an infection, and yet they still had, nevertheless, elevated levels of inflammation. And as the fat tissue expands, it creates more inflammation, and this then promotes problems like heart disease, atherosclerosis, and of course, insulin resistance.
So it's interesting to listen to Ben as he's talking about the nuances of fat cells. So he's expressing that when you're young, you can grow more fat cells. But at some point, you stop creating new fat cells, and those fat cells, those existing fat cells, just swell and get bigger and bigger and bigger, which becomes toxic, which the second video is going in on how fat cells can have a pro-inflammatory response within the body. And I really feel that people are so desperate to do a keto or carnivore diet, and they lose weight on the scale, but they're not thinking about their electrolytes. They're not thinking about if they're actually losing fat. And it's really sad because they'll go and spew out these, I lost 60 pounds, but nobody's talking about the affectation of their weight loss or the rebounding effect or how fat cells work. Yeah, lose fat, gain fat. Fat becomes toxic. If you don't sleep well, then one night of poor sleep makes you insulin resistant. And then the next day, I don't care how much cardio you do, all you do is become more insulin resistant. Then you start losing water and muscle and not fat. So it's interesting to learn more and more about fat cells and how we're toxic. It's not just about eating a diet. It's changing your entire life. It's changing the way you sleep, what time you go to bed, how much you chew your food down to chyme, to liquid. Addressing the gallbladder, he has another video discussing how having a high functioning gallbladder that can release bile properly will help with fat breakdown. That's another video, which I find quite interesting. There's a lot of nuanced information about how we gain weight, fat, and how we lose fat. But I'll tell you right now, you have to manage your insulin, your sleep, because of the insulin resistance when you don't sleep well. You have to manage eating every couple of hours. Even though our hunter-gatherers did not do that, they rested, and we don't. We have a weak gut wall, so we don't even absorb the nutrition from the food that you eat once a day. Then you overwhelm the digestive tract by eating one meal a day, and you're having a cytokine or an inflammatory response, and you plateau. You continue to try to do OMAD and you don't lose the weight. You just lose collagen under the skin. You lose strength. You jack your adrenals and thyroid up. Your testosterone drops. There's some, I can go over these subjects over and over again. I find them very interesting. Stuff to think about. Stop using diet as a means to lose weight and think about your entire day and how you conduct yourself and how you deal with stress. And don't go down the cortisol pathway. Eating too much protein and fasting is going down that cortisol pathway and jacking up your systems, like your thyroid and reproductive system. You become slathered in cortisol, or drinking coffee, or eating fruit. I'm just saying. It's interesting though. Comment below if you've been fasting or eating a bunch of protein or trying to compare yourself to a hunter-gatherer, which you don't have the same gut and they didn't have bills. Comment below. Tell me what you guys think and what you'd like me to talk about. And I swear I keep telling people that I'm going to do this challenge. Like, where do I sign up? I'm like, soon. Not yet. It's coming. I'm also starting my house build at the same time. So there's a lot, but life is good. Energy at 56, not 55 anymore, not 46, but 56. 16 years in ketosis. Life is amazing if you make it. You have to design your body, but first you got to design the mind. Peace.